Welcome to another RS Wave update. So this is the US dollar chart, the Dixie, and I want to do a little bit of analysis on this simply because I am totally curious at the price action that's going on here. And the only way to really find out is to drill deep into the waves. Now, first of all, you'll notice that there's a 1-2 pattern and then there's a wave 3 down the bottom, right? Now, let's focus on this area for a second. Right, this is the previous fourth wave of that wave 3. Now, this is an area of importance because typically after a wave 3 corrects, you're going to get a retracement back to the previous fourth wave, right? Now, this is important because this is likely where the price is trying to head towards. But I want to know exactly what kind of pattern is trying to get there at every minute detail. Now, before I zoom into the current E wave that is going to be completing this wave 4, right? If I can actually grab it. There we go. I just want to show you something. Now, I've taken a line, a channel, and I've put it between the highest point, the two highest point of the previous fourth wave, right? And I've created like a mini channel. Now, I want you to pay attention to how important this area is if you look back through time. So number one, during our D wave, we noticed that the price action bounced off this area before it went straight up. Okay, so there's one point of interest. We'll put a little circle on that one. And then back here, we had a break below this area. It bounced down and then it consolidated around this area, right? Very interesting. Now, as we keep moving along, you'll notice that there is a lot of price action that is messing around with this particular area. So there's a lot of importance in that 93, 94 area, even going back years and years, right? Now, if you go back even further, and this is just to add even more info, you'll notice that back in 2003, there was even a little gap in this area, right? There's a little gap in there, and you'll notice that it bounced beneath it, and it bounced back up, and then it just basically gapped through it. Very interesting. So I'll mark that also as an interesting area of importance. Going back even further to 1999, 97, 99, even back as far as the early 90s, you can see that there is a lot of interaction with this area, right? You can see it. It's pretty obvious that, look, here it gapped through it again, right? Came back, went down, came back up, came back through, and you can see that it's just, for some reason, the Dixie just loves this area. It's just an area of importance, right? I forgot to mark these ones, right? So you can see that we've got like literally like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times that the market has really just respected this particular area for some reason, right? So right now, what's going on? Okay. Now, I'm just going to remove these ones for a sec. And I want to explain the correction that we're seeing right now. Okay, so area of importance, we've established that. We have our wave 3 down the bottom. We have an A, B, C, D because that's the only pattern that can be a D. It's basically a type 2 expanded zigzag. Now, I had a look at all these waves really deeply for the last couple of hours. And yes, I do spend hours looking at just a small amount of waves, but I really try to dig deep to make sure that what I'm looking at still is valid, right? It makes sense. So A, B, C, D. Now, what is this pattern that we're seeing now? Okay. Now, initially, I thought it was a 5-wave move, and then basically, started to really wander. So I had a closer look. Now I'm going to take you down to the hourly chart for this one. Okay. And there's a couple of things to notice. Now, number one, the first move up, I cannot say that it's anything apart from a zigzag wave one. Okay. Zigzag wave one. Now, I tried to make this a wave one and a two and a one and a two, but the internal waves do not really correspond to that kind of count. So I took it upon myself to investigate the entire thing. Now, from here, I can see a 3-3-5-3-5, which makes more sense than trying to make anything corrective in here without basically losing the whole count moving forward. So that means that after wave two, we're looking for another zigzag. Now, I look closely and I see a 5-wave move after this point here that ends around here, right? And then I start to see basically a 3-3-5-3-5 pattern for B. Okay, so then I look closely and I start to see what is considered an ending diagonal pattern, right? So just to explain that in a little bit of detail, right? You can see that the first pattern here is a zigzag, right? Now, why would I say that? Well, for starters, the middle part of this move is not the sharpest, okay? But it's not just that. I had a look at the rest of the waves, okay? So then I saw a bit of a sharp correction here, right? So we've got wave 1, 2, and then we've got wave 3. Now, the interesting part here is that because wave 2 was short and sharp, we're looking for some kind of a little bit more of a drawn out wave 4. So I noticed that we had basically a 3, 3, 5, 3, 5 pattern going on. And then we had our very last little mini zigzag right in there. Okay. Now the rest of that pattern, I believe, is the beginning of the correction that followed afterwards, which was basically a sharp wave 4 to the downside, right? So you could say that, okay, wave 2 was kind of sideways, shallow. So wave 4 is basically deeper. Okay, it's a deeper correction. So automatically it's like, okay, well, we thought this was a 5-wave move, but there's evidence here to suggest that it's not a regular 5-wave move. It's what I consider a type 1 weak wave E. Okay. Now, so that takes us basically to the next part of this, and that's the wave 5. Now, what is going on in here? Now, I need to take you a little bit further down into the 15-minute chart to really explain this one. Okay, so straight off the bat, we have a wave A here. Okay, and then we have basically a wave A, which is the largest pattern in the correction. But then I started to realize, and this is of course part of the RES wave methodology, that once you have a wave A that is pretty big and the largest, the rest of the waves will tend to be smaller, and basically look like part of the next move, which is why Elliotians usually get it wrong, right? So if I go down even into the lower degree, right, the 5-minute, I can here see a zigzag wave B. It's a pretty complex one, but it's got a leading pattern to start off with, and then it's got its corrective portion, followed by a longer wave C. And a longer wave C can happen when you have a leading pattern, okay? Now, the interesting part here is that once we had our wave B, we saw a CDE pattern, right? Now, you don't always see these, but they are around, and I have explained how they do appear. And that right there is where we end wave B of this last zigzag for a wave 5. Okay, so in that case, we, since we discovered wave 4, I'll just zoom back out a bit now, right? We discovered wave 4, we have wave 2, right? We have wave 4, trend line channel to the top of wave 3, and then we start to observe the kind of price action that we're seeing here, okay? So since wave 4 started, made a 1 and a 2. The 2 dipped below the channel and then popped straight back up to create wave A. Then we had our wave B. Now, since our wave B, we've come back to the midway point and it's kind of encountered a bit of resistance there. So it's kind of like made this move down. No big deal, just part of the corrective structure that's going on here. And then, this would be considered like a 1, 2, currently in like a wave 3 type pattern, right? Now, once we get to that point, we're going to see a wave 4 and a wave 5, and it's going to probably touch the top of this channel, which interestingly is also roughly around that area of importance. Okay, so you can just say that it's around this area here. Okay, now it'll be very interesting to see how it interacts with this area. Okay, because that's kind of like where the target is for this move. Okay, so cryptos have been kind of, a bit sluggish and corrective during this period of time, but they haven't really gone down. And the reason I believe that's the case is because this is the last wave of this wave E, and wave 5s are typically the weakest. So it's not having much of an impact on the cryptos, right? Now, just to add further credence to the whole, analysis here, how am I going to do this? Hang on, sorry, I'm just drawing all over the place now. Let's go to the daily for a second, right? Okay. So since the highs of March 2020, we'll take a fib from the top down to the end of wave 3. And you'll notice that the 0.382 is almost right in the middle of that channel. Okay, so that is also another sort of area of importance, right? So whatever the case, we're looking for something around 94, the 94 area, okay? The 94 to the 94 and a half area for this correction in wave 4 to complete before we see the last and final move down for wave 5. Okay. Now, how are we going to determine roughly when we're at the end of wave 5? Well, number one, it has to make a new low that goes below wave 3 or any of its corrective patterns. In this case, the corrective patterns didn't go below wave 3, so just below the end of wave 3. Okay. Another piece of evidence that you could use also, I'll just get rid of these green lines are distracting me now, right? Now, another piece of evidence would be, as I've mentioned many times, the length of wave C, right? As long as we have it on the chart properly, we can try to use it, okay? Basically, you take a copy of the length of wave C, so hold down Control and drag, and then put it down to basically from the top March 2020 down to this area here. So around, we're going to be looking for something around the 87, could be 87, 88 mark. This is just a guide, right? Because CDE patterns tend to have basically a similar length. It's almost like a zigzag pattern, but it's not a zigzag pattern. Okay, there's a difference between a CDE pattern and a zigzag pattern. Okay, so don't get it twisted. Don't get it confused. They're not the same thing. Okay. Now, this particular move, once it happens, right, this is what I believe is going to create the final high in the crypto market, right? From where we are now up to the highs. So this is going to be our guide as to, how it's going to happen, how we're going to get there, etc. Now, I have to say again that once this completes, we're going to see a move to the upside, wave C, right? Now, how big this wave C will be? Well, quite simply put, we'd have to measure the length of wave A, which is right here. Now, I don't know how well this is going to work because of the, actually, it's not a log scale chart, so it should be okay. Right? So roughly, we're going to go to around, basically around 106. Right? Could be a little bit above, could be a little bit below, but this is the kind of thing we're looking for. Okay? Now tell me, is this going to create a pretty big move down in cryptos after we hit a high? I would say the answer is yes. And this is when things are going to get very interesting. For the hodlers, beware. Make sure that you do your research and learn your waves, because a lot of the profits that you may have made over the past couple of years, you may basically lose it all, and have to wait for the market to move up again in order to, get back to break even or back to where you were or whatever. Now, for the people who do want to take profits at the highs and then wait for this move to happen, well, I suggest you definitely need to learn the waves, because it's going to create the confidence that you need so that you're not just following someone blindly. You're actually starting to realize how these markets work, how the patterns work, how they always repeat. And having that peace of mind is going to serve you well in the future as well. Okay. Now, there are some changes coming to RES Wave in the near term, maybe over the next 2 to 3 months, where these kinds of videos will no longer be posted, but rather they'll be only available to members. Okay, because we're going to revamp the entire process of joining RES Wave, and basically we will be most likely bumping up the price moving forward. But for now, it's going to remain as a one-time payment. So I suggest you get on the website and have a look at that. But at least I've given you something here today that you can use as a guide and track it, see it for yourself, prove it to yourself, and I'll catch you on the next one.